Hello, and welcome to the podcast that discusses all things gaming. Coming to you from the home of Indie PopCon, Gen Con, and the gaming capital of the world, we are The Established Facts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 161 of The Established Facts. I am so glad to be back. I'm sorry that you all missed me so much over the last couple of episodes, but, you know, life happens. So, without any further ado, we'll go ahead and do our introduction and then actually talk about our episode. And it's really kind of creepy that everyone at the table is so quiet right now. So I'm going to go ahead and make that stop. To my right...
Prime.
I hate you.
That was the appropriate response. This is Josh.
I'm Lance.
I'm Avital.
This is Princess Katie.
And we have a new friend with us today. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, sir.
My name is Jake.
From State
And
Farm.
I am, of course, your humble host, Big Don. So, Jake is a new friend of ours on the podcast, but not necessarily a new friend of ours in general. I think I've known you 3 years now.
Yeah, going
Something
on 3
like
years.
that. And Jake is Katie's boyfriend, Princess Katie's boyfriend, soon to be known as King Jake, I think is what we were joking around with before the podcast started. So, welcome to the show.
He could be
thank
a
you.
duke. And then
duke,
work his way up.
work
to
his
being
way
a
up.
Prince, and
Like
then
the Baron.
I mean, I did get demoted to Duchess once.
That's true. That's true. A duke would be nice because you still get land titles and you still have serfs.
But not
Baron.
nearly
Less
the
chance of
responsibility.
beheading.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because in the royal family, everybody just kind of looks at you and goes, "He's an idiot,"
it's just
but
the
he's
duke.
blood. It's just the duke, right?
So really, I should be a duke at this point.
Yeah. Well, you're a dookie.
It's good to have goals, buddy.
Yeah.
That
All
was
right.
a pat on the shoulder from Katie.
That's right.
Good to have goals. Shut up.
So,
Get out of here.
we are quickly winding down the year 2017.
Too quickly.
I think we've got,
Weird.
including this one, like five episodes left, 4 episodes
Well,
left.
no, 4 because the first
Between
one of
7 and 90. That's how many episodes we have.
the first one of 2018 lands on New Year's Day.
Okay. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a reality. So, you know, we want to encourage everybody to take your time to appreciate the things that happened in 2017 because 2018 will be here soon, and this will all be over with as far as the year.
Unless North
The
Korea.
year.
And then
It'll all be over.
Everything's ending.
So done. I can't even. So, what I would like to talk about on this episode, whether you guys want to or not, because I don't really care, is fast-paced versus slow-paced games. Thank you, Lance, for that. And so we're going to kind of examine games that take less than an hour to play. That would be what I would qualify as a fast-paced game. So games like The Resistance, Le Boom, Zombie 15, any of the escape games, things like that. Versus slow-paced games for our versus topic. So anything that takes more than 2 hours to play. Twilight Imperium, Risk might fall into that. Axis and Allies for sure. The war game, yes, Lance?
what about episodic games that it only lasts an hour, but then the next time you play, it's picking up the exact same game?
so legacy games. Legacy
Sure.
is the new. That's the
Legacy,
new,
episodic.
Yeah.
Sure.
I haven't seen an episodic game. Legacy's
Every
a
D&D
term of it.
game you've ever played, if you
Oh.
stop in the middle
Okay.
of a session and
Okay.
keep going, it's episodic.
I would say, for the purposes of our versus topic, an episodic game that would last anywhere between 1 and 2 hours, we will eliminate from the slow-paced game fast-paced game categories because
Like
we'll
one
talk
shot.
about those. But even like a role-playing game or something like that might take 2, 3, 4 hours to play out, I would say that would still fall within the slow-paced game. We're not necessarily excluding anything outside of the realm of gaming other than based on its time frame. Okay. So
now I'm gonna pitch an argument partially against that. I feel like almost everything you've explained, example wise, are board game related, and then as soon as you throw role playing games in there, you're almost dealing with an entirely different genre of games. I feel like maybe role playing games should not be in this versus discussion.
I mean, that's fine. I was just giving an example of a game that might be considered a slow-paced game,
Okay.
which would be a role-playing game.
But I mean, a decision, even simply put, role playing versus board games, what would your preference be? Because those are two different
Okay.
gaming things. All
right.
If we take it down to just the board gaming of preference, fast versus slow,
Sure.
Card games land, in my opinion, into the board gaming realm, but maybe I'm wrong in that.
Okay.
So that's
So
the reason I
tabletop
asked.
games excluding RPGs.
That would be my
Tabletop games excluding
Okay.
RPGs. I'm fine with that.
Sounds good.
Fast-paced versus slow-paced. And we'll talk about medium-paced games later on in the discussion, but for the purposes of our versus topic, we'll restrict ourselves to anything that takes 59 minutes or less would be considered a fast-paced game. Anything that would take 2 hours or more would be considered a slow crawl game. Yes, Lance.
Can I ask for a further clarification? Is this with fellow adults or is this with children? Because if I'm playing a game with my kids, the answer is going to be one thing. With adults, it may be another.
Also, with kids, almost anything can become a slow crawl game,
Well, this
depending
is
on their
based on-
age and how hard you have to get them to focus.
These are always based on your preference. So my answer to that would be if you prefer to sit down and play games with your kids, and those games typically take 2 to 3 hours, then that could be your answer. If by chance you prefer to play games with adults, or even if it is your kids, but you're playing games that they understand, like King of Tokyo or something that don't have a ton of mechanics and you can play them in less than an hour, then that would be your qualification. Whatever the factors are that lead to your general preference is the determination that you should use to come up with your answer.
Okay.
You just answered it without answering.
I did. Did you like that?
He's good at that.
I am, yeah.
Don's been working around officials in the government for too long.
That is true. How do you answer this question without telling anybody what they need to do? All right. So we'll go ahead and start with Prime, and then we'll go around the table and get everybody's quick-fire answer, and then we'll go, obviously, back into our discussion. So, Prime, fast-paced gaming versus slow-crawl gaming.
Slow crawl.
Okay?
Fast pace.
Fast pace.
Bad at making decisions, like always.
Excluding RPGs.
Right, excluding RPGs. I think I'm gonna have to go with fast paced.
Okay?
I'm gonna have to say fast paced too, because most things I like fall like right around the 60-ish minutes.
Sure.
I'm going to go with fast paced too.
Fast-paced? Okay. I think I'm going to go with fast-paced as well. So, Josh, for the only answer who is slow?
That's because
You were
Josh
the
is
I
slow.
am the only answer.
Josh
that's
Prime.
right.
You are the
Yes.
only answer that's slow. Well, okay. Jake, I'm going to put you on the spot since you're new.
Okay.
Why do you prefer to play fast-paced games?
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of new to gaming, so a lot of the games that I have been exposed to have been like party games. So I guess I've leaned a little bit closer to the fast pace just simply because it's really the only thing that I have been exposed to, and it's a lot of fun. I like getting like sitting down and enjoying it with everyone, and then just like having that done, not sitting there for like 2 or 3 hours, because a lot of the friends that I hang out with, we're usually doing other things when we're playing games too. So
Okay. All right. Well, Katie, what do you think? As far as fast-paced games, why is that your preference?
Well, because normally you're never just playing one game. You're getting together with people, so you can get more games in if you're playing faster paced games. Like unless you are specifically like with slow crawl games, it's normally all right, y'all. We're getting together. We're gonna make a night of playing Axis and Allies, and we might finish it. Who knows? We might not. It might sit on the table until next time. With fast paced games, you can get your games finished and done with, and you can play multiple games in a night with people.
Okay. Lance, why would you say you prefer fast-paced over slow?
I'm going to default back to my kids and I play games.
Okay.
And if a game lasts longer than 25 minutes, all of a sudden I've got two little demons running around trying to figure out something else that they want to do while the game is still going on.
Right.
So that's an answer. I also like the previous answers of it's a party game. If you're getting together with your friends, you want to be able to play more games as possible, and I don't want a game like Cards Against Humanity to last 6 hours. I want that to be a hit it and quit it game and move on.
Okay. And then Josh.
So the reason I chose fast was because of the parameters of the question.
Sure.
My preference is the middle.
Oh, right. Right.
So
I think most people's is probably going to be around that 1 to 2 hour mark when it comes to games. But yes.
So for fast-paced games, a lot of times it's look. We've got maybe an hour to play a game. I'd love to play a game with you. Let's grab something real quick and play it. And having those at your disposal is a great tool in your arsenal for playing games. We're getting to the point now where we're starting to play board games with Maggie as well, and they have to be quick, or she wants to play another game.
Right, because the attention span of a child is not.
It's about 17 minutes, I
the
think. The
attention span of some adults these days is 17
no joke.
minutes.
No joke. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
As I stare off into space.
You were exactly who I was thinking about when he said that. Let's be real.
Now, Avital, you were a little hesitant to give a concrete answer, which I know that is obviously your thing. But in general, why do you feel like you had a little bit of difficulty picking one over the other?
Well, honestly, like, I haven't played as many of the slower crawl games, so, like, I don't necessarily feel like...
Maybe a lack of experience.
A lack of experience. But, like... And also, like, we took RPGs out because those are always longer, and I like those RPG and LARP for me personally, and those are always several hours long, but it's a different kind of a thing because you're role-playing and... but most of the time, fast-paced, because, what everybody else has said, like, you can play more games, it's not a big commitment of time, because everyone is busy, and, well, maybe sometimes we can get together and spend several hours together. That doesn't always happen. It's like, oh, hey, we happen to be in the same place at the same time, let's do something real fast, and it's, oh, well, okay, we can't play this game because it's going to take this long. And also for me, I don't like competitive games, and a lot of the like quicker ones that are more like party types, either they're maybe more cooperative or they're more like silly, so the competitiveness is like downplayed for me because I really don't like competitive games.
Right.
Which is why I like role-playing games so much. So I guess that's why I kind of fell on the fast-paced side of it.
Okay, very cool. And then, lastly, well, I guess I could have given my opinion.
Go ahead,
but
take your time. I'm
doesn't.
slow crawling.
I know you are. Like a Saturday night, baby, slow crawling.
That's gonna be yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, hold on.
yeah.
Dr. Deb just manifested out of nowhere.
Guest podcaster.
So the podcast stalker would be Dr. Deb right now, because I'm taking care of the little one in the other room. But Prime is not the only one
And
who's
me.
slow crawl. I would have picked slow crawl. So when you're all going, oh my gosh, where's like all the people who want to do long games? I'm in the kitchen at the moment watching the baby. Okay, so stand strong for us slow crawlers, okay, Prime? Because I know you can do it. But
I got your back.
I appreciate it. So I'm defending the slow crawlers. Yay!
And for those of you feminists out there, that was her decision, not mine.
Or mine, for that matter.
Yeah, I
Slow
Like
crawler.
it mad. He's a slow crawler.
And he's sitting in her chair, so... the slow crawl chair.
So what was the question?
So the question is, what is it about slow crawl games that you prefer over playing like a fast paced game?
I feel like there's a higher reward for slow crawl games. And I feel like, at least with the good ones, with the good slow crawl games, not the ones that were intended to be a short game that ended in 5 hours, you know. But nobody understands what they're doing.
Like the first time we played Tomb.
Yeah. But like the ones that were intended to be the long-term slow crawl games, I like them because they're designed to immerse you in the game itself, like Talisman.
Yeah.
You know,
you put an investment in
or
for
Descent.
a much larger. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Like you have your role, you have your character, and whether there's a competitive aspect to it or not, at the end of the game, assuming that you had a good game, your reaction is going to be a lot more memorable than playing a simple party game. It's like playing a game of Codenames versus playing a game of Talisman. I'm probably going to remember more of what happened in Talisman than I am about Codenames. Not that either one of them is less fun, but I would just prefer the long-term, hard-earned victory in the end.
Okay.
So,
Lance?
I'm not gonna jump on the fence here, but I will preface what I'm about to say as sometimes the long game is better. For example, since I live so far away, if I'm going to drive down to meet all of you, it's either going to be for a long game that's worth the time or a bunch of small games that we can play over and over again. I'm not going to come down here just so that we can play one game of LaBoom and then drive back home.
Right.
That said, if we're having like a dinner, a group get-together, and a game happens to come out that's short, that's different. But if the purpose for the trip is just to play games, then I would prefer a longer-paced game just to make it worth the drive time,
the
and
investment
time away from home.
Yeah,
there you go.
Absolutely. I can totally understand that. Obviously, I chose quick-paced games, and for a very similar reason as Lance. I enjoy playing games with my kids. I enjoy playing games with my friends, and it seems like it's easier for me. So, for example, if I go to a convention or if I go over to somebody's house that I have not normally been to, and I bring my own games, I try and pack my games into a bag, like a backpack or something like that. And it just so happens that coincidentally, games that are quicker paced games usually have smaller packaging. There's not so many pieces and parts to it. So you can load a few of them into your game bag and bring them with you. So like LaBoom or Flux or something along those lines, you could even just throw those in a pocket and not have to worry about. That's the reason I, for the most part, always carry at least one deck of cards with me at all times, because you can use a standard deck of 52 playing cards and play, a huge variety of different games because you're playing with the same components, just different rules all the time. So I really love playing fast-paced games because you can get more of them in, or you can play the same game multiple times and have different results every time. Flux is very much that way, where you can play 6 games of Flux and every one of them is a little bit different than the last. So getting into our overall discussion of game timing and planning your game night or something along those lines, I will then now open the realm of what I like to call median-paced games, or the time frame in which most board games will fall, which is going to be somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. And what I would like to examine is not just the difference between these games in time frame, because that is simple and boring, and we all understand that. 59 minutes or less, 1 to 2 hours, and then anything over 2 hours. Those are kind of the parameters that I set for the defining marks of those types of games. Really what I would like to talk about in that is what sort of games do you like to play in those time frames, and what kind of games would you encourage people to check out that fall within those time frames, things like that. So I will go ahead, just to kind of help everybody get their creative juices flowing, I'll go ahead and kind of start. When it comes to, we can start with examining fast-paced games. When it comes to playing a fast-paced game, one of my favorite fast-paced games that I will default to is King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo is Yahtzee-style rules where you are rolling 6 dice and you're trying to match up sets and do different things with those dice. And the object of the game is you are playing a kaijudo, or a Japanese monster, sort of like Godzilla or Mothra, or big aliens, or big sci-fi ape.
Anything
something.
you can find in the video game Rampage.
For the most part, yeah.
Or a panda, if you...
Or a panda.
But
and
a really big panda.
a very big
mean-looking
panda.
panda,
That's
yeah.
right. And so you're rolling dice to attack the other monsters, to gain energy so that you can purchase powers from like the power block area, where you can grow a second head or have a spiked tail or something along
Gain
those lines.
victory points,
Gain
gain
victory
life,
points. Yeah, it is a
do
victory
damage.
point game, but it's also kind of a King of the Hill style game where you can either win by scoring 20 points before anyone else, or you can win by being the last monster standing. It's a very fun... It's a very fun game that lends itself to play within about 45 minutes. Even if you're teaching people, I have found that the rules are simple, especially because they're very similar to Yahtzee-style rules when it comes to the dice mechanic, that it's not difficult to explain to somebody. You get 3 chances to roll the dice. You can keep whatever dice you want. You can throw away whatever dice you want. And at the end of that third roll, whatever dice you keep, you read the results off, and you're either hurting people, or you're gaining energy, or you're gaining points, things like that.
And it's not that difficult for a 7-year-old
It's
to
not.
understand.
I mean, my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old and I and my wife, we play that game, to our heart's content, because they understand how the mechanics work. Now, we all play a little bit different, because obviously my wife and I are more seasoned gamers than they are. So we have a little bit more strategy and play with what we're doing depending on the situation. But
And your 6-year-old can't
my
read cards.
6-year-old,
so.
yeah, he can't read the cards, but we read them to him if he's interested. We make sure that we keep the game as fair for everyone at the table. And in that fact, we also don't pull punches when it comes to who is winning and who is losing. My wife and I are not the kind of people that will allow our kids to win just to win. We want them to learn the value of winning and the value of losing. And our kids have beaten us several times in King of Tokyo. But that's why it's kind of our default when it comes to a fast-paced game, because we can play it in 45 minutes. And then if there's another game that they want to get out, You Build Sorry, or if they want to sit down and play chess or something like that, that is something that playing in a game like King of Tokyo lends itself to. So, anyway, so that's kind of what I would like to examine when it comes to our different paced games. So does anybody have one for like fast paced, or I mean, we don't have to make all of them, fast paced first. If you guys have an idea of what sort of games you prefer and what time frame you prefer to play them in and why.
I think a lot of it will come down to your audience. Seems like the wrong term, but who's at the game table. You definitely mentioned King of Tokyo because it kind of fits all those age groups. And I know that Jake and Katie have both mentioned different party games. If it's a full-on adult group, the Cards Against Humanity, or $1 Million Butt, which if you guys have not checked out $1 Million Butt by Rooster Teeth, I highly recommend it.
It's fun.
It was a great Kickstarter. Really recommend that game.
I would like to do a factor play of that if we have not done one yet.
Okay, we can certainly try, but it'll require some filtering.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't mean now. I mean, this.
I understand. I just mean, to filter through the cards a little bit, because there are some on the adult side of things, but
It's the same
After
reason
Dark.
why we haven't played Cards Against Humanity
Yes.
on a regular episode.
yes. Now, if we wanted to say engage the side project,
Dark.
I'm not doing it after dark.
Factor Dark.
Nope, not going to do it.
Factor Dark.
So,
It just sounds like it's the dark version
Anyways.
of all of us.
Does that mean I get to have a cool Spock-esque goatee? If
Sure.
it's the dark side us?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Does that mean I can
I
be...
guess
You're Princess
I'd have
Katie,
to have a
which
much
would be
higher
evil
voice
queen.
and call
oh,
myself
that's
Little
true.
Don.
I'll be
Poison apple.
anti-prime.
I just hate to be the same
Anti-prime.
person.
continuing on,
So, yeah.
I think Flux
nebulous.
is a great game, especially if you have, if you're just a collection of nerds. Any of the Flux variants are great for that, but even just the standard Flux game. Because one of the biggest arguments you hear from somebody when you're getting ready to start a game night is, I don't have any idea how to play a game. Well, the great thing about Flux is you put it down and go, all right, the rules are draw one, play one. It'll change as we go, so you'll be
Read the
learning it
card.
just like us.
Just read the card.
Yeah, right. Read exactly what the card says, and once we have a goal, that's how you win the game. End of story. And it's
That's
okay.
pretty much it.
And
Maybe
it's-
just explaining what the different cards are, and that's
sure
really about it.
And it's a great kind of starter to get everybody in the mood type game. And then
We've played that game as an icebreaker before. At
We have?
I think we went to did we take it to PopCon 2 years ago or 3 years ago? They did like a PopCon promotional dinner thing at Scotty's Brewhouse downtown. Didn't we play it with some people?
We did it there. We also did it at the table. We did that
Yeah,
and Munchkin
right,
at the
yeah.
table the first couple
Yep.
of years we were at Gen Con. Not Gen Con, PopCon. We can't afford Gen Con. It's true. Anyways, so I think that's a good starter. I'm kind of wondering maybe how do we start a game and then what do we move into and then that's how I think I would start a game night.
Sure.
I have more for later, but
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I know that one of our more recent, and this game, I've owned this game for a couple of years, but one of our more recent fast-paced games that literally plays within a few minutes is Le Boom. And it's again, very similar to Flux. It's an icebreaker, hot potato game. You have a 6-sided die, and you have a little plastic bomb that sits in the middle, like a cartoon ball with a fuse coming out of the top of it, kind of bomb from a Looney Tunes episode. And you roll a die, and there's either a bomb, there is a fuse, or there's an explosion. If you get the bomb, you take the bomb from the center of the table and you set it in front of you. If somebody else rolls the bomb, they take the bomb. If you roll a fuse, it does nothing. It just stalls and stalls and stalls. If you roll an explosion, whoever the bomb is in front of is eliminated from the game. You put the bomb back in the middle, and then you just continue the game. And it is a silly, super fast-paced game that we've used several times for different kinds of icebreakers. The other kinds of games I can think of that are fast-paced games, The Resistance is a deception-style game. If you've ever played a game like Are You a Werewolf or something like that, The Resistance plays itself fairly quickly, as well as Masquerade. I'm trying to think if there are... Zombie 15 from Aiello it plays in 15 minutes. Everything is set to a CD track, and you play it within 15 minutes, which is similar to the Escape games. You have Zombie City and the Hidden Temple. Those are all set to 15-minute CD tracks, and those are dice rolling games. And I'll tell you what, if you ever want to play a game that puts some pressure on you,
Gives you hardcore anxiety.
oh my gosh, those games are intense. And so, for example, I have not played the Hidden Temple, but I know that Zombie City, I think the rules are the same. But what you do is you have 5 dice, I believe. You roll those dice. You lay tiles to build your little city. You have to gain resources, and then you have to get back to the church when the church bells start ringing in order for you to survive, because if you're left out, you start taking damage and bad things happen to you. And so it plays in 15 minutes, and it's 3 rounds. So each round is 5 minutes long, and you have to be able to gain all these resources and escape within those 15 minutes. And it is intense, but it's so much fun. I love that game. Bonnie hates that game because of how much anxiety comes along with it. It's crazy.
If you're naturally anxious, don't play that game.
That just sounds like a bad time to me. Like I wouldn't even
Right.
want to play that game ever.
But that's my point. A lot of
me.
people are gonna fall. Right. A lot of people are gonna fall in. That press your luck, time regulated. We have to do this within so much to build that pressure. But then other people, just are not going to be able to do that. So when it comes to mid-range games, which is going to be...
Hold on.
Oh, Lance, did you have one?
Yeah,
Because you hadn't spoken.
I had
and
a
you
couple.
didn't- Okay, go
I'm
for
just
it
waiting
then.
for the silence
Sorry.
so I can...
There's no
You
silence.
did just kind of talk for 5 minutes.
There's no silence.
Were you
That's
waiting
because
for the
no one
sound
else
of
was
silence?
I was thinking as I walk. as I lean away from my microphone.
There's a game that we play at BillCon every year.
Oh, that's
That
true.
is a very quick paced game.
It's a lot of
It's a little
fun.
3D game
Yeah.
featuring the Masters of the Universe, the
I think
He-Man
we need to
3D
get,
game.
We need to get miniatures of those characters.
Miniatures of those characters.
Yeah, like minis, like plastic minis of the little paper.
You can just go to the toy store and buy the actual dolls of them. the
Yeah,
action
but
figures.
I mean, the board and the squares are so much larger.
I know,
Or,
but
mean,
it sounds
so
like
much
a
smaller
great
than the-
3D print project or something.
Right,
A
that's what I'm saying.
giant version of it with the actual
Oh,
action
that's true.
figures.
That would be fun.
Anyway,
that would be.
it's from 1984, and I forget who makes it. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Mattel. I don't know.
It's
I will
probably
look-
licensed
continue.
through Mattel, to be honest. But it's really just a 4 or a 5 square grid by 5 square grid on a rotating surface, and you spin a spinner. You can move 1 through 4 spaces. There are spaces on the board that tell you what to do, like lose a turn, go forward, go back, or if you land on a certain space, it rotates the board. So someone who is at the very start, if 2 rotations of the board happens, they win the game. Because it's 5 by 5, you squish it 5, and then you squish it another 5, done.
It's true.
It's a really quick game. It's designed to be that way, because in the 80s, kids' games were supposed to be very quick.
Right.
I like Nuns on the Run. That's
Oh,
another
yes.
really quick game if you let it be, because
Yeah.
it's a certain amount of turns and then your
It is.
first person wins. The Captain is Dead is another one of those. It borders on that.
We've played that game fairly quickly, so it can lend itself to being under an hour.
And
yeah.
5-year mission, yeah. That's another one it ends up being quick because you die so quickly. But I had a question, because I also like chess, and chess can take longer than an hour. If it's a good game, it should. If not, if you're playing with someone with less or more skill than you, it can take a lot less time. But poker. Individual hands of poker take a lot less than an hour, but a game of poker can be 2, 3, even 5 hours.
Right.
Where would you fit that in?
I would say it would be a slow crawl game.
Poker would be a slow crawl game?
Yeah, because the objective in poker is to last as long as you can.
Okay. Then I'm going to call that my long pace game.
Okay.
Anyone else on the slow, fast pace?
So slow
Did you have
pace,
to-
fast
did you
pace.
have to-
I
Josh had to
rewind
reset
myself.
His microchip.
I'll say that a fast-paced game that we actually just picked up this past Gen Con, Truck Off, the food truck frenzy. It's really
They
fun.
did a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't back out on Kickstarter. I saw it, and then
What's the name of this game?
Truck Off, the food truck frenzy. It's really fun. We played it, and I was telling Avital before the podcast, I was late to the game because it started right when the exhibit hall opened, and I sent Jake and my brother. I was like, you guys go to the table, go play the game, let them know I have to run and get our copy of Unearth before they sell out.
Sure.
So I ran into the exhibit hall. I got back. I played the game for probably not even 10 full minutes and fell in love with it.
Okay.
It's 5 turns, guaranteed 5 turns. That's it. Like
Nice.
it's a really fun little game. Like the art's really neat. It's a lot of fun, especially for people who are new to gaming.
Oh, are you looking?
The Refuge.
Oh, the Refuge. Yeah.
I was trying to. That is a quick game and that's a
Zombie
lot of fun.
checkers.
Yeah,
Zombie
basically.
checkers.
Combat, shoots and
We played
ladders.
it 2 Gen Cons ago.
Yeah.
It's like checkers
Yes.
with zombies. It's great.
Yeah, it is awesome.
What?
Dixon Krakens.
That's right.
Dixon
Yeah.
Krakens.
By the Blind Ferret folks.
That's right. Okay, so medium range games. So this is anything that falls within the 1 to 2 hours of playtime. I would go ahead and lump in games like Zombicide, things like that, because I know that they can take longer than that, but most of the objectives are 2 hours or less. When it comes to, and if you have a good team that has played together and knows their characters well, and you teamwork well, it can, you can pound
Well,
out a game of Zombicide. fairly
That
quickly.
game will land between the medium and slow crawl, depending on which scenario you take.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Most of the scenarios though are like 2 or less hours.
Yeah. Very, very well thought out game. That one, Ghostbusters, and
Yeah.
Because that's just a knockoff or a different version of the zombie
yes,
side.
and I
Yeah.
haven't tried
Very
Teenage Mutant
similar,
Ninja Turtles. From what I understand, though, I haven't tried it. I own them. I own it, but they land similar. It's a similar pace thing. I am a big fan of the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and if you're playing with 4 or less players, it will stay under about that 2 hour mark. You play any more than 4, it could take half a day. I've seen, because it can be long and long and arduous search, or it could be short if everybody's really good at rolling.
Or really bad. Or really bad. Yeah.
How quickly do you want to win and or possibly die?
We have played that game in less than an hour and a half and lost our rears on that game.
It's true.
Just because we couldn't, not because anybody died,
Right.
just because we just could legitimately not complete the tasks at hand, and it just took over us.
Yeah, but that's a good... Tyrants of the Underdark, I thought, was one that if you're playing with a group that really knows what they're doing, it sits in that kind of mid-range as well. I want to say Legendary, the Marvel version of it, can sit in the middle, but having played both Legendary Encounters Firefly and Legendary Encounters Alien, those really span the gamut, depending, again, on how badly you draw.
Yeah, the alien one
vouch
can
for
take
Aliens.
forever.
Well,
Or
the first time
3
we
rounds.
played it, it took us 25 minutes
Oh, wow.
because it killed.
I was
all
saying
of
because
us
you died.
in no time.
Okay,
I mean,
it can
was
take
insane.
forever if you're, not dead.
Yeah. I played Firefly last year at BillCon, and that was about an hour and a half game, and I thought it was really well balanced for in general. I think the Encounters games through Legendary are really well balanced and kind of fall within that mid range, I would say. I just had one in my head and I couldn't think of it. Now I can't
Monopoly?
think of it. Yeah, if you're playing with my wife, 2 hours.
Yeah, right. That's it. That's all
Before
it's
you
gonna take.
lose.
Right,
you lose.
before you lose.
Yeah, she's insane.
Formula D. Formula
Oh,
D.
yeah.
That for those that are into racing or not,
Or Formula Day. If
Or
you,
anime.
Right.
Yeah.
Very,
Its own cartoon.
is it?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Very
No,
entertaining
no.
race game.
Initial D is.
Initial D.
Excuse me.
Because I played that card game.
Yeah, we did. Memories. Anyhow.
Yeah, Formula Day. I remember now. The Dungeons and Dragons Adventures board games.
Yes.
Those games all fall within that medium. Well, I don't know. Temple of Elemental Evil probably falls within the quick games for us because we've literally never won.
We haven't made it out of the first 2
Yeah.
or 3 rooms.
Yeah, I mean, it kills us every time. Like, murders.
We've tried multiple strategies.
Murder Death kills us. We've
But
changed around
the
characters.
AD&D red box.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
a
you know,
medium length game.
yeah,
Because you can
just-
survive it, but we kicked out role-playing games.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean,
There are lots of options.
Mysterium.
But what is
Mysterium
Red Dragon Inn.
great. Oh, Red Dragon.
Depending on how many people you have playing.
Silly.
Since you can technically have up to like 1 million people playing, depending on how many of the expansions you have.
If you have all the expansions.
If you're playing with a reasonable sized group of people,
Yeah,
it's a
4 to 8.
medium
If
game.
you play with 4 to 8, you can get it done in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or less.
Did you say 5-year mission?
Lance did.
5-year mission.
I think
5-year
that is
mission is
quick.
kind of a fun game that falls within that short to medium range of timing because if you have good dice rolls or really really bad dice rolls, the game can go fairly quickly.
And fewer people.
Yeah, that is true.
So what is it about the middle that kind of seems to be the sweet spot for everybody? What is it that I mean, I have my reasons, but I'm very curious about others.
Jake,
Actually, I know for me, the mid games, I really like them. Specifically, what you were talking about when Tyrants of the Underdark. That was one of the first like mid games besides like Monopoly or whatever.
Okay.
I played that one as a child, but Katie exposed me to Tyrants of the Underdark.
Really quick story. I am a horrible significant other.
Terrible.
So
What a
Jake,
terrible start.
Jake is not a tabletop gamer. Jake has always been a video gamer, and so I was like, well, let me introduce you to my preferred style of gaming, and we can tabletop game. And the first game I introduced him to was Tyrants of the Underdark, assuming that he would beat me because I've never won a game of Tyrants of the Underdark because I'm dumb. But I thought since he was smart and good at games, he would beat me. But I didn't realize the crossover between video games to board games is so different. So I would just like to say he is just a champ because I was like, look at this game we can play together. It'll be great. And he was like, I hate this.
Are you sure you don't like slow crawl games?
Yeah, I know. I think I might have to switch over. To
I
be
have
honest.
I have been through many a situations with my wife. Hey, let's just sit down and play this game. Especially when I win the first like 3 times we play it. And
World's Fair.
She's not World's Fair. Don't worry, she
fair.
has got me back on that one.
Nice.
So I get it.
World's not
Yeah.
fair. World's not fair.
But yeah, no, honestly though, with those medium games, I know like Katie was talking about how I'm not really a skilled board game player. So doing those medium games, I can see the different strategies that people are bringing into these. And that's really helpful for me because I know in particular, Katie is a very like, she controls one section of the board, but you're not going to get into that section because that's her section of the board. Right. And then there's other people who are like expansionists, or they're going to go all over the board and all over the place, and they're going to do different things to win in different ways. And that was just like a really cool game to kind of open my mind to that, to think of like the next steps. And that's why I like fast-paced games, just because you can have multiple people play a bunch of games like we were talking about earlier. But the mid games, I feel you can really sit down and kind of fine tune your strategies, or at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a good mid-range game for you would be Dead of Winter.
Okay.
Because it is a cooperative game.
Yeah.
Especially if you play. What is the second version of
We played the second version. What is it?
Longest Night?
Yes, yeah. Bryce and Danny have it.
Long
Yeah.
night, I think.
Long,
Yeah.
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 I have it as well. So
It is, because it is a kind of a press your luck resource management cooperative game. I really enjoy playing that game. I like competitive games
Yeah.
in general. However, a good cooperative game that really encourages teamwork, I think, is great. Pandemic is another game. Have you played Pandemic yet?
No, I've heard about it. Though.
It's that game.
I don't think I've ever beaten it.
one time.
It is a very, like, once you have the strategy down for that game, it's not extremely difficult to win on a consistent basis, but if you change up the classes that you're playing and things like that, the game is essentially you are playing a member of a team from the CDC, Center of Disease Control, and you're trying to find the cure for 4 different diseases and essentially save the world from a pandemic.
Okay. Hence the name.
Yeah.
However, you have to do
It
it
is-
incredibly quickly because it's
Because
spreading.
They spread
Okay.
like crazy. And
Wow,
it is
surprise. Diseases spread
insane.
quickly.
Yeah, right.
And
it
it's
is-
more difficult to get to some places than it is to get to other
Yeah,
places.
there's a whole lot of strategy behind it. It's a really good game, but it is. I think that game plays. That's a medium range game. It plays, it plays less than 2 hours.
As a matter of fact, Deb just walked in here and suggested Pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Part of the reason that I think that medium games for me, I like that 1 to 2 hour time frame because, kind of like what Josh said earlier, it allows you to sit down, play a game, and really feel like you've accomplished something. Especially because it gives you time to really get engaged. It's not good for kids, obviously, but it's a great
Or some
way,
adults.
right? Well, it's a great way for like, hey, I'm coming over for a couple hours. Let's have dinner and let's sit down and play a game before everyone's out. For gotta take, even with the kids that are playing in the living room or whatever, the adults can sit down and play about a medium ranged game. And enjoy that time together. And, we've gotten a lot of grief at BillCon in the past because we'll take 3 hours to play a game that should have taken 90 minutes. Well, because we're social gamers more than we are quantity gamers. So for me, it really is that kind of time frame is really, you can have a social interaction during that time frame without feeling like you're pressed for time, or like we mentioned, role-playing games got thrown out in the verses, but a role-playing game will take 4 to 5 hours. But a lot of times, the game master has a story he's trying to tell, and we don't want to, interrupt that time because we got 4 hours. We're already taking 4 hours out of our day. Let's maximize that time. I think a medium game gives the flexibility that a short or long game may not.
Well, I really love Jake's observation too. I think a medium range game that's a 1 to 2 hour game allows you to see either the strategy or multiple strategies of the same game like unfold. Even if they're not necessarily successful, at least you learn what not to do. When you're playing the game, or maybe if you do that, but if you make a different decision in the second or third round than you did the first time, it can really change the outcome of your game. Go ahead, Lance.
What was the name of the video game that we played with Mikey at BillCon? The pick up the gun and run game, the Halo-like game.
It's the first-person shooter in board game form.
Are you talking about this year?
Yes.
I wasn't
the one that
there.
he wasn't
That's
in
right.
it?
Yeah, that's why I didn't necessarily address
Don
it to
says,
you.
"Wow, you mean that thing I wasn't there
was-
for?"
I was looking at you from the
wasn't there.
aspect
You're
that you
good.
were in my direction.
Hey, you
you're
remember
good.
Bill? Oh, wait.
You remember? I remember opening Sister Act the musical during BillCon,
You remember when I caught all those fish at BillCon?
and I remember you falling into the lake.
No, he
Last
jumped.
year.
He
jumped in to get his fishing pole last year.
I leapt in.
It was the
Anyway,
greatest thing in the world.
That
Pirouetted.
game is
Yeah.
one of those where you can play it and it never be the same game a bunch of times. So I don't know if you can learn the strategy of that game except go grab a gun, shoot your opponents, and get away from them.
Sure, that makes total sense.
That's the basis of the game. Grab a
But it's
gun,
just like
shoot
any
people,
first-person
win the
shooter
game.
video game. Might as well also it's get the gun, shoot people, don't get shot.
It's called Adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Oh, okay.
very
Okay.
much a fun game.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So
for
that
the
could
game
be a
you
very
gave.
quick game. It was for us.
Right.
But it also could be a much longer game if strategy is involved. We
Sure.
were learning it, so it was pick up the gun and shoot.
Right.
Well, there is that one does have a timer base to it. You can only go a certain number of rounds.
Right, but
as well.
once you learn what the guns are, you can go searching for that
True.
one, and it would make the game longer.
True.
I was just thinking about this when you guys were talking about Adrenaline and a couple of the other games, but one of my favorite silly mid-range games is Epic Spell Wars of the Battle Wizards Duel at Mount Skullfire.
Yeah.
If you have not played that game, it is insane.
Don't expect to win.
There's no, I mean, if you play with Ticklebottom, then of course he's Faye Ticklebottom is one of the characters in the game, and
I
thought that was a person that you knew.
I was right there with you, Lance. So it's like, who's Ticklebottom, and why do they have that name?
It does sound
What
like
an
a
interesting
nickname.
surname
If we
you
find
have.
someone, we
we-
need to name him Ticklebottom.
Faye Ticklebottom.
No, not Faye, just Ticklebottom. Just
Ticklebottom.
Mr. Ticklebottom.
Okay.
That's a cat's name.
I was just say, yeah, you can. Everyone here, cat's
Definitely a
name.
cat.
Yep.
Oh my
Okay.
No. I'm thinking
But-
of an individual.
In general, I think we can all kind of agree that though fast-paced games, slow crawl games, whether we prefer one or the other over the latter, mid-range games are kind of, in my opinion, mid-range games are kind of the niche that a lot of us fall into because you have time to see the strategy play out and kind of play out your own strategy. In my opinion, a good mid-range game, for example, if you had a 4-hour game night, a good mid-range game, you could get 2 to 3 of those in, and you have the satisfaction of playing a game that was more than just a 15-minute Leboom session, but you also have the satisfaction of being able to play multiple, so you're not stuck in that 3, 4, 5 hour Axis and Allies game, if you're lucky. But getting into that, kind of an examination of slow crawl games. What are some of our favorite games that do take over 2 hours? And I'm okay.
Mousetrap.
I'm okay with games that cross over. I love how your wife couldn't record
said
for
the
this
war game.
episode, and yet is yelling responses from the living room. The war game.
She's
That is
growing
true.
another
She's
one.
watching a small human and growing a second. But what are some of our favorite slow crawl games? And I'm totally fine with games that are kind of on that line of like can get into more than 2 hours. So like a zombie side game or something like that. If you wanted to kind of re-examine that.
I'm going to have to go with Zombicide and the Pathfinder Adventure card game, both of which can fall into that 2+ hour very quickly, especially if we're going social. Or if you got multiple players. We played at BillCon with, 7 or 8 players
Of
for Zombicide.
7.
It was 7 players, and it took about 4 hours. We were teaching 3 of the players,
Yeah.
but
I mean, we had 8 characters because 1 died early.
yes, it's true. One died early.
Thanks to me.
But we brought him back with the promo character because he died within like 25 minutes.
He died in the second round. I
It
think.
was
Who was it?
Billy Tillman.
Yeah.
Oh,
Poor Billy tried to be the hero, and I said, "Okay, bye."
yeah.
Later.
Is that where he got trapped in a room with
Yep.
zombies? Oh, yeah.
He ran
told me
in it.
about
He was
that.
a hero.
He told me about that.
He fought very bravely and
Billy.
died very quickly.
That's right. I lived as human, dare to dream.
He's pretty much a George R. Martin novel. That's what he is. Like, the hero that dies in the
Oh,
first season.
sad.
So
So sad. But yeah, I think those hit that mark for me. My wife, as you may have heard her scream from the other room, mentioned the War Game from Jeff Stein out in California. We had interviewed him a few years ago at Gen Con. It is the Axis and Allies or Risk on steroids that were made with extra steroids. Matter of fact, the game table that
Steroids upon
currently
steroids.
is here was part of a purchase to make sure we had a game table that was large enough for said game, because the board itself is 3.5 by 7 foot long.
if they were going to go on like a commute or something, like a 4-day staycation,
Yes.
where all they did was play the War Game.
It can be played during regular exhibit hall hours. They showed that from 10 to 6. It can be played.
And
A game.
A game.
A game.
Ass game.
A long
It is. It's an 8-hour game.
time.
I'm not saying it's my favorite. I'm just informing the wife.
they're pretty much a real time game. So it's like,
Yeah.
I know a slow crawl game that I like that may not necessarily be a slow crawl game for everyone. It is for me because there's a lot of deciding. Is Mage Wars. And you've got to like pick out stuff from your spell book. So I spent a lot of time deliberating, but I think Mage Wars is a lot of fun. And I like that it's like kind of a long-term goal game. You're like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to, stop this guy? But I got to go to this part of the map because he's got that AoE. Like, I don't know. It's just a really fun game that I don't mind it taking a long time to finish.
We went on vacation just this past couple of weeks, and we learned how to play the Domino's Train game. That's one that can take quite a bit of time.
Yep.
Euchre is another one of those where it seems very fast-paced, but it can take a long time if you have players that know what they're doing. And we're not talking like a round, we're talking a competition of euchre, just
Sure.
like with
Yeah.
poker. So those are some long ones. Driving in Indianapolis during race weekend is
That's a
another
game.
fun, long game.
that's a game that at
Or
the end,
construction season,
that's the game at the
mean
end that nobody wins anyway.
which is any season besides the winter,
Yeah.
And then it's the winter.
It's true.
and then winter.
Baseball season.
That's a good, that's a good 3-hour game. That's a good 3-hour game. The Super Bowl, if you include the halftime show, obviously.
Yeah.
And the commercials and
Oh
I mean,
my
that's
goodness gracious!
Why I watch.
betting on things.
I mean, horse races not so much, but if you do an
Watching-
afternoon of horse races, then
Shopping on eBay.
shopping on eBay, that's not.
Eating at Chipotle.
It takes you 3 hours to eat a Chipotle.
Unless he's talking from
You're
start.
doing it wrong.
No,
Unless
that's
he's
just a
talking-
long game.
Yeah.
Like watching WrestleMania is a game in its own.
Yeah.
From start to finish, it's 3 hours.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
There you go. I think, kind of, and obviously I shot myself in the foot when I eliminated role-playing games because that is my life.
Right? That's why our
Role-play is life.
I just
can't
said
think of
eliminate
many.
that from the
Sure,
verses.
sure.
Discussions
Yeah, and I
another
don't
thing.
disagree with you. I think that was the right decision. But Dungeons and Dragons minis.
Oh yeah.
And we used to play that. The new Attack Wing. Those games kind of can last for a couple of hours. And then Axis and Allies is probably one of my... I enjoyed the War Game the one time that I played it, but I played Russia, and we were playing with the wrong rules, and circumstantially, I got nerfed like crazy. But I enjoy those long, slow crawl strategy games where you get to see, especially when you're, the War Game, you can play 8 people, something
think
like
so.
that. It's like 8 people. So when you're playing an intense strategy game with 8 different people, some of which are your allies and others which are not.
Oh, your Axis?
Are the Axis, correct. Unless you are the Axis, and then... That's right. But in general, that kind of a game is not only, in my opinion, really fun to play, but it's also really cool to watch people play. I don't know if I would stand there for 4 hours and watch somebody play a game like that, but being able to kind of see that storyline of, the war machine moving through, Western Europe and things like that is just kind of a nifty thing to see from a board game sense. And, obviously, role-playing games are kind of all of our niche when it comes to, like, the slow crawl stuff. I know Jake is kind of slowly getting introduced to that kind of stuff, which I'm really excited about.
He does a different kind of role-playing.
What we do in our private time is our business.
No, video games are a role-playing experience.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's true.
I don't know where your mind went.
Really going on this one, actually.
So... The question I have, because again, we're role players, so a 4 to 6 hour game for us is bring your dice, bring your character sheet, and have fun. With the war game, with Axis and Allies, how much of the time spent setting up the game detracts from the fun and time spent playing the game?
In general, the setup for that game probably takes 20 to 30 minutes of the entirety of the gameplay, but because A, you're playing with 8 people, and B, you're playing with so many individual pieces, parts, and units, that's really what takes up the gameplay of that game is what takes up the time. Now, what I will say from my experience in playing the war game is that there is a lot of time that you have between your rounds. So if I took a turn that might take 20 to 25 minutes legitimately for me to take, it may be 45 minutes to an hour before I take my next turn. Because that is the way that game is designed. It is so detailed. You have, unlike Axis and Allies, which is kind of the younger brother of what the war game is, even though it came out obviously before the war game. In general, the war game takes the detail that Axis and Allies has and puts it under a microscope. And you have individual ship units, and you can do naval battles, and you have individual aerial units, and you can do dogfight aerial wars and different. It is a really cool multi-dimensional war game that legitimately can take you 8 to 12 hours. If you're lucky, if you're good at the game and you are paying attention to what's going on and you are strategizing with your friends, it is legitimately an 8 to 10 hour game easily.
The reason I ask is because of Warhammer 40K.
Sure.
I watched, when I was in Korea, we had a role-playing game area. I watched people set that game up.
Uh-huh.
And then they played for maybe an hour. But the setup took 2 hours. Because they're getting a ruler out and they're measuring exact distances.
Yeah.
And does this piece go here? Is it facing in this direction, or is it facing in this slightly askewed direction? And I got tired of just watching them set it up, so I knew I would never play that game.
I would say when it comes to the setup of a game...
And I'm sorry if you like that game. It's great for you. It's just not for me.
If that's what you're into, it's definitely a good game. But I would say when it comes to the setup of a game... Unless it is something that you are doing once the game officially starts and having to manipulate that stuff, sure, I would add that in. But if it takes you, for example, Marvel Legendary takes probably 15 to 20 minutes to set up. I would not account that into the actual gameplay. The gameplay of Marvel Legendary can take somewhere in the neighborhood of an hour and a half to 2 hours plus, depending on how well or how poorly you are doing as in a semi-cooperative, competitive nature. Just like I wouldn't count Tear Down from a game as time. You know what I mean? Like that, I do not take those into account when I'm talking about the range of gameplay. Now, obviously, as someone who is hosting that game, that is something that you should take account of. So if you are going to be hosting a game with the war game, and it takes 30 to 45 minutes to set up, if you want to start at 10 o'clock, you need to be setting it up at 9. Those are the kind of... And I think in general, those are a lot of the factors that we should be paying attention to when it comes to gaming in general. I think that's why there is such a great variety of time frames with gaming, whether you play a quick game and you can literally walk in and pull out 3 pieces from a box and you're ready to go, and then you play it in 20 minutes and then you can play the next game. Or if you like to play those long, slow, drawn-out strategic games and things like that, all of those, in my opinion, have a time and a place. And I don't think any of us are against the idea of playing anything within those realms. Obviously, we've said multiple times that a lot of us are role players, and most role-playing games take several hours to unfold, and several, as Lance said earlier, episodes to really get the story moving with those kind of games and with creating the relationships of those characters and things like that. But in general, when it comes to just standard hobby tabletop board gaming, you're talking about, I'm going to play Molly the Zombie Slayer, and we're going to sit down and play, a 2-hour game of Zombicide, and not necessarily have to put so much focus on the material aspect of the character, but just, this is what my character does. And that's the great thing about having such a huge variety of different games. So, Josh, did you have some? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Jake, thank you again for hanging out with us and recording with us on your first episode. You are obviously welcome back anytime you would like.
Like, say, in 2 weeks.
That's right, in like 2 weeks or something like that. And, we want to thank all you guys for sticking around and listening to episode 161, the long and short of it. And so, on our last episode, which I was unfortunately not a part of, but... I did get to listen to the past facts, and they're insane. On our last episode, we established several short facts. Dungeons and dating
It's a thing.
Is a thing.
It will
It's a
be.
thing.
Mhm.
It's a thing.
And not what you think.
Right. Welcome to the dungeon. Very
We've got
similar
fun
to...
and games.
That's right. Welcome, welcome to the jungle. Right? Yeah. Hashtag Hail Joshy.
Somehow I got hailed, even though very often I also get killed.
Well, you know that whenever you get hailed, you're supposed to answer, and you have to follow the Federation's directive, right?
No.
Prime directive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right. The Prime Directive.
No one ever follows the Prime Directive. Don't even.
It actually is called the Prime
High
Directive.
five, bro.
No, I know, but
That was
nobody ever
awesome.
follows the Prime Directive.
Otherwise, there would be no show.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Oh,
that's
look at
right.
those people down there suffering.
We're going
Bye.
to the
We're not
neutral
allowed
zone.
to interfere with
We're
the
not
people
allowed in the neutral
that
zone.
aren't as
I don't care.
technologically advanced as us. Too bad. We're gonna go mess with them. We're gods.
It's a good thing that Orville doesn't have a Prime Directive, but that's
great.
a conversation
That's
for
great.
later.
It's like a new Star Trek movie started.
Yeah, basically.
They're interfering with
That's
the Prime
true.
Directive.
That's
In
true.
a major
We'll just hide our ship in the ocean, and that won't freak them out when it surfaces.
Not hide it in the ocean.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's their new god now. Oh, boy.
Those pesky teenagers.
That's right. And then the last established fact that we had from the last episode was hashtag Cupid's Love Spear. Please do not Google that. And so, for episode 161, we actually have 2 established facts. I figured that's, a couple less than the last episode.
Yeah, well, the last one were more highlights
It's
than
true.
facts,
It's true.
but
So,
See what happens
for-
when you're not here?
That's right. For episode 161, our first established fact is Josh Prime is the only answer that is slow. And secondly, like a good Saturday night, the slow crawl is king. No, nothing.
I
Slow
have
crawl.
to think about that one for a minute.
Like a bar crawl.
Oh, okay. I didn't get
Saturday
it.
night.
I didn't get it.
I hate all of you. All right, thank you so much for listening, and we will check you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Check out the Fear the Con Kickstarter. Please visit us at www.theestablishedfacts.com and our Facebook page, facebook.com/theestablishedfacts. If you would like to support us by buying some merchandise, visit cathaypress.com/castingrobot.
Bonus